Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 to What If Asta Had the Sharingan. So, in the last part, we left off with Asta awakening the Sharingan, the Mangekyo Sharingan, unlocking all of the different abilities that he would gain from that. And his different, basically, abilities are, he basically has fire chakra, or like the fire style chakra, which is basically just, he gradually will unlock more spells of that type, I guess, as time goes on. So he basically, with his Sharingan, has Sharingan Genjutsu, as well as mana or mana, whatever you want to call it, absorption, which he can add to his actual like mana pool, basically making it so he can cast more spells and different things like that. He has one other Mangekyo ability, which basically just allows him to enhance his different items and or weapons and pretty much anything. He can enhance his eyes. He can really do anything he wants. It basically just boosts the basically speed strength of his limbs or something like that, or it boosts the attack damage of a weapon. It basically just boosts whatever he basically enhances with whatever stats that they have. Like, say it's something that would grant him knowledge, it would basically give him more knowledge, I guess you could say. So that's what his enhanced spell actually will end up doing. So with that being said, I guess you could say, those will be the different, basically, abilities that Asta will have with his Sharingan. So with that being a thing, they end up returning to the actual kingdom after going through with the dungeon and beating Mr. Diamond Guy, where Yuno got his, basically, wind fairy thing. And yeah, that's where we're going to jump back into the what if. So without further ado, let's get started. So yeah, let's get back into the what if. So basically what would happen next would be some of the Black Bull members, along with Yuno and some of his basically members in his squad, would be invited to the awarding ceremony, where they basically just get awarded different basically ranks. So everybody's basically promoted to, like, basically just one rank higher, and this is where Asta, everybody like that, can just hear the negative, basically, connotation of what Yuno and Asta are due to them not being nobles, and due to them actually being commoners. There's not as much about Asta without him, like, not having magic or anything like that, and so, like I'm saying, there isn't as much, like, hatred against him, I guess you could say, or basically they're not looking down on him quite as much, but they're still looking down on him and simply because of the fact that they weren't born into these high-ranking families, I guess you could say. So Asta basically still stands up and he's just like, I'm gonna become the Wizard King one day, so I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. He basically does that. Yuno also stands up and he's basically just like, Asta, you're not going to become the Wizard King, because I am. He basically just does that. So they both look at each other with a little bit of a smile, a little bit of a smirk, and everybody around them just basically just grunts. They're like, whatever. Like, some fucking commoner is going to become... No, there's no way they're going to become the Wizard King, or either of them is going to become the Wizard King. Not even close. They're not even going to become real magic knights. Jeez, they're fakes. No real magic knight isn't a fucking noble. It's basically just what everybody's thinking. Other than, like, obviously a few of them, like Fuegoleon's, like, little brother, and people like that, which Asta and Yuno actually get along with fairly well. So, as they're going on with their meeting, basically, some weird thing happens. They hear some kind of explosion off in the distance. They basically go outside to check it out, and they see that there's an undead army basically going through and raiding the actual town. Everybody goes down, and they go face off against everybody in the town. So they face off against some of the different, basically, zombies, and I don't remember exactly as of to whether or not they basically had the ability to, but I don't remember which zombies basically were able to use magic and different things like that, and what their actual styles, or not styles, but what their actual, like, elements or whatever it was, what kind of magic they could use. So I'm gonna say one of the things that Asta, or one of the zombies, undead, that Asta ends up fighting actually wields lightning magic. Asta, at this point, activates his Mangekyo Sharingan, and he absorbs the attack. But as he's absorbing the attack, something weird happens, something he hasn't actually seen happening before to him. It added a spell to his, basically, book, and he's wondering exactly what just happened. He looks at the actual spell that was added, and to his surprise, it wasn't just some random spell that happened to be added at that moment. It was the exact spell that was basically shot at him that he just absorbed. The lightning ball. And he's like, what? That's weird. I don't know what just happened there. And he uses that same spell, which is lightning ball, and he throws it back at the undead, basically just completely incinerating him. He goes, and they find out that they need to basically take out the source of these undead warriors, and they go do so. They find Mr. Undead Man himself. I'm not going to look up his name because I don't care enough to do so, and they start fighting his actual, stronger minions. Asta, throughout the battle, continues to absorb the different attacks that they give, and realizes that basically he can really just kind of absorb the whatever it is, and he gets that spell. He hasn't seen a limit to this yet, but then again, he has absorbed different attacks, but most of them have been elemental based. But he hasn't tried absorbing something that wasn't elemental based. He hasn't tried to absorb something like time magic or something like that. He doesn't know if he could actually do something like that. All he's really absorbed so far are lightning and fire fire basically things, I guess you could say. So he doesn't know exactly what the extent of his copying abilities are. So by the end of the fight with the undead warriors, Asta would have the following abilities. Starting with his different fire abilities, he can use a basic fireball. He can use a fire sword, just like how he did before, basically, except it's a little bit stronger version of it. Fire blast, fire flash, which fire blast is kind of like, it just basically shoots off an explosion of fire, kind of like how Bakugo does, I guess you could say, from My Hero, except it's a little bit bigger scale, and it's less of an explosion and more of just hot. And fire flash basically just shoots a flash of flame, obviously, at the enemy. It kind of just goes with the name. He has the, spell to basically conjure weapons and armor out of out of fire. And now for the actual lightning abilities he had. Like I said a little bit ago, he has a lightning ball, as well as lightning lance, shocking sword, which is basically just his sword, except instead of using fire to enhance it, he uses lightning. Pretty self-explanatory on that one. Lightning flash, which basically is just a paralysis spell, I guess you could say. And one I actually forgot to basically mention for his fire is it basically just a fire nado or fire tornado, which is pretty obvious. It's just a tornado, except it's made of fucking fire, and it's pretty badass, if I do say so myself. So that's all the different things that he can do after or at least those types of spells that he can do after the undead invasion happens. Fuegoleon is still basically teleported away, get his arm cut off, and things like that happen relatively normally. Everybody returns to the hideout, and Funeral gets the idea. He's just like, maybe I could go on a date with some people. So he gets Asta and Luck to basically go, and he basically makes up a little bit of a gathering. He meets with his girl. Luck actually hits it off pretty well with his, and Asta would basically talk to Rebecca, the red-haired girl. And they would actually realize that they have a lot in common, except for the fact that it's kind of opposite, whereas Asta grew up in an orphanage. She kind of works at an orphanage, I guess you could say, or helps out at an orphanage. And they realize that, oh, that's pretty cool. So she actually invites him over, and obviously Noelle was listening to this, and she kind of was just like, I have to follow them because I'm a creep, and I don't like Asta. No, I don't like him. I don't like him or anything like that. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen. So they end up going to the actual orphanage, and everybody basically goes to bed. before Asta wakes up to, I seriously don't know if her name is Rebecca. Red-haired girl, I think her name is Rebecca. If I'm mistaken, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to call her Rebecca. Rebecca wakes Asta up, and she's like, all the kids are gone! And they're like, what? So Asta activates his Sharingan, and he can see that basically the air is basically covered in magic, and it's some kind of spell, but he can't actually decipher what it is. They're like, what? And Asta basically leads her to the source of this magic, basically just because of where the actual power is centered at, and he shows up there. He sees all the kids under some weird trance, and that they're kind of being tortured. He obviously is completely pissed at this, so he runs out there and he basically saves all the kids. He easily manages to defeat basically everybody there, until some of the Eye of the Midnight Sun basically show up. Mrs. Slime Girl, what is her name? Sally is her name. She shows up and she starts fighting with Asta. Asta uses a bunch of different types of magic. He tries to absorb the slime, and that honestly might work. I'm pretty sure that the slime is it is at the very least magically infused, but I'm just gonna say it doesn't work. Otherwise, this fight wouldn't really be all too interesting. Asta realizes he can't do that, and he shoots an absolutely massive fireball at it. It still doesn't really do anything, and he now jumps up to it and he places his hand inside of it. He yells, lightning flash, and there's basically a flash of lightning that gets surged through the entire slime until it finally meets its target. Why can't I remember her name? I literally said it about 3 seconds ago. Sally. It meets its target with Sally, and she gets paralyzed and falls off of the slime. Asta binds her, basically, and this is where he's like, oh, we finally did it. We beat him. We beat her. So then, obviously they can't have nice things, and Licht shows up. Licht kind of just looks down and figures out what's going on before basically appearing in a flash right before Sally, undoing her binds and taking her. You will not take away my basically useful subordinates, he says, before being like, I'm gonna fight you now. So he challenges everybody there, and the battle with basically Asta and everybody else. It's really only Asta, though, because nobody else can really do anything against Licht, to be honest, against him. So they begin their fight with Asta basically, legit, nobody really does anything except for Asta, to be honest, in this fight. So Asta would basically challenge Licht, and he'd actually be doing not all too shabby. He has the Mangekyo, which, absurdly increases his reaction time. It also increases his speed and strength, basically just allowing him to actually be pretty decent. Oh my god, what the I cannot talk, apparently. Pretty decent in terms of actually keeping up with Licht. So, with their battle continuing, Licht would start shooting, basically, light spells at Asta, who would then absorb them, and he would realize that he isn't getting these light spells added to his spell book, and he figures that it has to be certain types of spells. So, their battle basically continues on, with Asta actually not doing bad in this fight, but obviously he is not powerful enough to actually defeat Licht in a one-on-one fight, and Yami would still eventually show up, and he would actually pretty easily manage to take down Licht, and it would be pretty easy for him to do so, and he'd also do it he'd do it sooner than before. So after taking out Licht, he would bind him, and they would literally be just about to leave, taking Licht with them for questioning to the Wizard King. So Licht would basically just be bound at this point, and the three people of the Midnight Sun, I don't know, the three Midnight basically people, Midnight Eye, or Night Side, it's whatever. They show up, and they're like, how dare you take Licht? They're basically just mad, because they're like, Licht is our master, Licht is this, Licht is that, and Yami basically leans over, and he's basically gets an idea. He basically tells Asta, he's like, how fast can you go? And Asta's probably, is like, well, I'm pretty fast, but I don't really have any spells that can boost my speed all too much. And Yami basically was like, okay, whatever. Try getting back to the Wizard King as soon as possible. And Asta's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, take Licht with you. Hurry, go! And Asta's like, okay, sure. So he ends up grabbing Licht's body, and obviously Licht is unconscious at this point, and he runs off trying to get back to the Wizard King. And obviously, Finral would, I'm pretty sure Finral's there at least, he would basically be like, spatial magic, teleport him into the capital. So Asta would be there with Licht, and he'd take him to the Wizard King. So the Wizard King would basically begin questioning Licht, and he would eventually find out that Licht is, in fact, the actual captain of the Golden Dawn. So he'd be like, God damn it. He'd be pissed at this point, because he'd be like, that doesn't make sense. How does that work? He's just trying to figure out exactly what is going on with basically everything that's going on, and he's like, what am I supposed to do now? So Yami would obviously be fine because the other Magic Knight captains would show up and help him face off against the three of them. They would end up leaving, but they would obviously go to the capital and try to take back Licht. They would actually successfully do so, taking the Wizard King and everybody like that off guard, and they would pretty easily manage to take Licht back and leave. But obviously they managed to question Licht quite a bit before that actually happened, and learned quite a bit about him and the elves. Not too much, to like the point where they know of his plan of like reincarnating the elves through certain people and different things like that. But he'd know, the Wizard King and Marx would know of like the fact that the elves were massacred by humans back in the day, and he would know of their ambition to take over, or to basically kill all humans. He just doesn't exactly know how they're going to plan on doing that. So this obviously means that Mr. Dawn's guy, or not Dawn, the Golden Dawn captain, isn't really going to be returning, because the Wizard King, even though he likes, I don't remember his name, the captain of the Golden Dawn, he can't exactly just be like, forgive him for what he's done. Even though he technically was like being a different person at that time, where he has another person inside of him, he can't exactly just forgive him for that thing, I guess you could say. So obviously the captain of the Golden Dawn doesn't end up coming back, and in the meantime, oh god, that's bad, because the captain, or the vice captain of the Golden Dawn is Finral's brother, I'm pretty sure, and that guy is like, he's a fucking like psychopath, like he's not exactly great. So that's not good. But yeah, that's just not good. So he would briefly basically take over, and everybody would increase a rank or so, probably, just because of the fact that they need to be stronger, I guess you could say. So obviously at this point they would have more of a reason to basically try to get the magic stones, due to knowing exactly that, or knowing that they need the magic or the elf would actually need the magic stones in order to do what his plan was. They don't know exactly what his plan was, but they know that he was going after the magic stones. So this is where the Wizard King would basically tell Asta, or not Asta, but tell Yami that some of the Black Bulls were going to basically fetch at least one of these magic stones, just to be able to basically keep it away from Licht. So they do so, and they're told of the underwater temple, where they eventually obviously show up, and they meet the old man, who explains to them his game. But that's where we're going to leave this part off, so sorry for the, not kind of, whatever you want to call it, kind of a cliffhanger, kind of not. So sorry for that, but I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out, bye.